In this video, you're going to learn a little more about aspects. Aspects are one of the 4 building blocks of astrology, along with signs, planets, houses, and aspects. So aspects is one of the main, almost cornerstones, bits of information you need to know about astrology. This video is part of my aspect series, and there are a couple more videos available, and also I'll be creating some more in the future as well. And all of the videos related to aspects will be listed below down in the description box. So I'm going to be sharing with you some interpretation keywords for all of the aspects that are generally used in Western tropical zodiac. So we're going to be looking at major aspects, minor aspects, and lesser used aspects, and I'll explain all about them as we go through. So let me tell you about my aspects download. It's a handy PDF that supports all of the aspects videos within this series, and there's quite a lot of information there about keywords, aspects, and major aspect patterns as well. And I'll put the link to that download in the description box as well. So you can, if you're interested, you can get yourself a copy of that. There is a modest fee. So the aspect guide is a valuable resource. It has quite a bit of information about the main aspects. It's got a lot of information about major aspect patterns, and there are some example charts as well of famous people that you know and love, perhaps, but definitely some people you've heard of. So if you're interested in further knowing a little bit more about aspects to support what I'm actually saying in these videos, then get the guide as well. And if any of this interests you, please subscribe, like, and share the video with anybody who would be interested. Okay, so let's get started. So now we're going to be looking at aspects, the dialogue between the planets. So there are several types of aspects. We have major aspects, minor aspects, and lesser used aspects, and I'm going to tell you about the difference between those as well. So in our major aspects list, we have the 5 major aspects, which are the conjunction, that's 0 degrees with an orb of 8, the opposition, which is 180 degrees with an orb of 8, the trine, which is 120 degrees with an orb of 8, a square, which is 90 degrees with an orb of 8, and the sextile, which is 60 degrees now with an orb of 4. So those are your 5 major aspects. They're also known as Ptolemaic aspects. So you may have heard of these already. So let's have a look at the conjunction. This is the 0 degrees. So some keywords for this are unity, synergy, and subjective. When 2 planets are conjoined to each other, they are actually working together, unified, and synergy really is the indication that 1 + 1 = 3. They work better together. They work as a team in your chart. And I would say this is the strongest aspect there actually is. Next, we have the opposition. This is 180 degrees. And some keywords here would be objective, projection, and external dilemmas. So you can be objective when you have 2 planets in opposition because they're on opposite sides of the chart, so they can clearly see each other and be objective about each other. This also brings in the theory of projection, where the one planet will project its issues onto the other planet and vice versa, and it will flip-flop depending on what day it is and what time of the year is and which planet is stronger. Typically, one planet would be stronger within any aspect, and that is more likely to be the planet that projects its issues to the other planet. So say, for instance, you've got Mars opposition Venus, which will relate to your love life. You might be saying, oh yes, well, if you weren't so difficult, our life would have been so much better. So you're projecting the issues from Venus onto Mars. And external dilemmas, this comes from the nature of the opposition, that when it is an opposition, people who are opposing you, any planet that would be opposite your sun would be in opposition, and it would create a situation where you would have a dilemma with somebody outside as well. So those are some keywords for the opposition. Then we have the trine aspect. This is 120 degrees. The keywords here is equilibrium, soothes tensions, and body, mind, and spirit. So the trine is really your big good aspect. It's typically drawn in blue in charts. It brings equilibrium because there are, first time, we've now got 3 points to make our first triangle. So there is now a plane, whereas previously we only had a line. So the trine has the ability to soothe tensions, and 2 planets that are trine each other will ease any other tension within the chart. They are certainly working very well together for you. And the key there is body, mind, and spirit. It's like the great trilogies of time, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, if you will. But these days we're going to say body, mind, and spirit. You've got your stuff together when you've got trines in your chart. So let's look at the square. So the square is a 90-degree angle. And here you have keywords of tension, resistance, and internal dilemmas. So the tension comes from the nature of the square, the fact that a 90-degree angle really is what a square aspect is. So as you can see, these can be built upon. They are structures. We see them. All our buildings are built on squares, and the actual tension within the angle creates the stability almost of any building that is built with squares. So it's far easier to build a square house than to build a circular house. But this creates resistance, and there's actually tension within the angle, which adds almost the strength to the square. Without the tension, without the resistance, things would not get done. If you do have two planets in square in your chart, they are likely to be the two planets that you're working with on a daily basis. You're working through the stuff where you have squares. And squares create internal dilemmas, whereas oppositions provided external dilemmas. Now with squares, you are wrangling with yourself. So say you have, I don't know, the sun square the moon, you will be wrangling with that within your own personality, within your own self, because it's a square aspect as opposed to the opposition where you would have external dilemmas. And then the sextile, which is 60 degrees. Some keywords we have here are latent talents, awareness, and assistance. So this is the nice little aspect. This is also blue. It's half of a trine. Here, latent talents is a main keyword of stuff that where two planets are in sextile, they show latent talents within your chart, within your life. So you may not be paying attention to these talents you may have. Perhaps you have a talent, I don't know, for music or ballet or whatever. And these are things that can be brought forward when you start studying astrology and say, oh yes, I see, I have Neptune sextile Venus. I need to get into music or something like that. So the sextile brings awareness because it's something that you perhaps know about. You might even know that you say, oh yeah, I can cook or something, but you never really do it because it's a sextile, so you don't have to do it. It's latent. This is a bit like an aspect where you're lying in a hammock and you may or may not reach out for the pina colada that is floating by. And a sextile brings assistance to the two planets that are within the sextile, and any squares that jut off from those two planets will be assisted by the sextile, so it can relieve tension as well. Then we're going to look at the minor aspects, and all of the minor aspects from here on in have an orb of 2. So we have the semi-square at 45 degrees, we have the sesquiquadrat at 135 degrees, the semi-sextile at 30 degrees, and the quincunx at 150. And I just want to say at this point, if you're not fully understanding where these angles come from, you can go back to my other video about where do aspects come from. I'll put a link above and below for you there. So first up, we have these semi-squares. So this is the angle of 45 degrees. It's 1/8 of a circle. And this is typically shown as orange in charts. It's half a square, so squares are red and semi-squares are orange, so it can be challenging, and it can have all the there's your keywords: difficult, unstable, and persisting that you have with the square. So again, this brings in difficulties for you. It can suggest that the two planets struggle to work together, and in a way it's more unstable, whereas the square was stable because it was a 90 degrees. Now you have this 45-degree angle, which may need support as well. And this is also an aspect of persisting. These are known as manifesting aspects as well, the squares and the semi-squares, where if you don't have any squares in your chart, your semi-squares will step up for you and be your squares, so do not worry about that. However, if you do have squares, then the semi-squares will just add to where tension will be happening and provide some instability to any planets that they connect to, and squares that jut off from there. So the image I have there is actually the Lionsgate Bridge in Vancouver, and because it's a suspension bridge, the tension is actually there. It can be slightly unstable, but it will work once you get it right. So if those cables where we're just lying on the floor, they would be unstable and not be supportive. But the way the structure is and the angle that these are coming at, it's creating this ability to persist and stay up, basically. So that is kind of the image you want to carry about your semi-square, that it's like a suspension bridge. Then we have the sesquiquadrates, and here I have a couple of guys. I'd love to say it was me, but there's a couple of guys here leaning into the void. There is tension here. People feel compelled to move on sesquiquadrates, and there are obviously challenges. So if you have two planets that are sesquiquadrate each other, there will be a bit of tension. They will need attention. This will also be an orange aspect in a chart. You will feel compelled to, the call of the void, lean on out, go and take on that challenge. No one has to do this skydiving, but that's the feeling you get when you have two planets in sesquiquadrate, that you actually feel compelled to go and attend to these issues. Then we move on to the semisextile. This is an angle of 30 degrees. And here this is slightly different because our keywords here are now ignores, redirects, and unsettling. So two planets that are semisextile each other are quite happy to ignore each other. They really don't want to work together. And they are happy to redirect the energy either back to the other planet or elsewhere into the chart. It is a challenge to try and work semisextiles together cohesively in your chart, and it's probably an aspect that you will get to later on once you've dealt with all your squares, trines, and oppositions. This can be an unsettling aspect because you're really not interested in what the two planets are not interested in what each one's trying to say, so they're just going to almost brush them off and say, yes, okay, I'll deal with you later. Very much as they're having a conversation in this image, but they're not listening to each other. Then we have the quincunx, which is the angle of 150 degrees. Some keywords here are awkward, adjustment, and unsupportive. So a quincunx aspect is one where constant adjustment has to be made. So where two planets are in quincunx, you as the owner of that aspect in your chart will be addressing the one planet at the one end and then making adjustments with the other planet. So it's one of those aspects where it almost niggles you. It's awkward and there's not a clear solution. And it's very much as this giraffe, the fact that she actually wants to drink some water or whatever she's doing there, when they're trying to lean forward, it's a very awkward position to be in. The giraffe has to make adjustments, and in a way it's almost in a dangerous position because the animal is vulnerable at this point when adjustments have to be made. So if you have two planets in quincunx to each other, they can bring this awkwardness to your chart and tend to be unsupportive of each other unless they are otherwise engaged within the chart. So quincunxes generally are green in a chart, as are the semisextiles. Then we're going to have a quick look at the lesser used aspects, and these are the more randomized angles that we have. So there is the quintile. This is the 5 pattern. This is at 72 degrees with an orb of 2 degrees. We're looking at the septile at 51.4 degrees with an orb of 2. They've all got orbs of 2 actually, and then the novale at 40 and the decile at 36 degrees. So these are way lesser used aspects, and they're lesser used because they are they're not easily spotted in a chart, and they will come in different colors too. I'll go through that now. So your quintile series of aspects will give you the quintile at 72 degrees and a biquintile at 144 degrees. So that's double the one quintile. Quintiles tend to be drawn in that turquoise color. I believe it's called cyan in a chart. So some keywords for your quintile is creative, evolutionary potential, and arranging and making. Quintiles really do show creativity in a chart, and almost when we say evolutionary potential, that it's kind of built in from that you've almost got it in your fiber to be creative if you have two planets in quintile. Because the orb's tight, you won't have many of them. You may have one or two if that within the two planets in quintile within your chart. And if so, you need to tap into that and find out where are you creative and how can you explore it, because this is stuff that you do almost on a wet weekend because you're so busy dealing with on a daily basis the squares, the oppositions and the trines. So again, with arranging and making, this is, I want to say, if you'll get crafty, I don't know, maybe you're making wooden birdhouses or you're making something or other, but you're sorting things out and almost arranging things, which is very much a keyword for the quintile suite of aspects. Then we have the septile. This is your 7 pattern. So the septile is 51.4 degrees, the biseptile is 102.8 degrees, and the triseptile is 154.2 degrees. And we can see quite clearly that you're not going to be able to just eyeball and spot these aspects within a chart. And this also is one reason why they're not well used. The other reason is because the septile divides, when you divide the chart by 7, it breaks it into a non-rational number, which is a whole number, I believe. So you have a fraction. This weakens the actual meaning of these septiles and the efficacy of the septile suite of aspects within your chart. So some keywords for the septile suite are modest, wisdom seeking, and spiritual creationalism. So 2 planets that are septile or biseptile or triseptile will be modest. They work quietly in the background. Wisdom seeking suggests that you need to have an elevated consciousness to do wisdom seeking in the first place. So this again works quietly in the background. And spiritual creationism is also to do with taking spirituality into your life and the evolution of consciousness, which is what we were saying a moment ago, to bring in, to realize that there are other realms within life that we perhaps could pay more attention to. So 2 planets within a septile aspect in your chart will tap into these meanings. Then we have the noval. The angle here is 40 degrees, again an orb of 2. So our keywords here are initiations, mystical inevitabilities, and what we are becoming. 2 planets in noval at 40 degrees can be the beginning of what we are becoming almost. That it is almost inevitable that you will develop in the nature of 2 planets that are in the noval aspect together. And you would, of course, want to interpret this fully, how the chart is laid out. It's, I don't want to say it's a spiritual aspect, but it's more to do with what we are naturally supposed to be doing and what we are becoming. And as you get older, you will see the influence of noval aspects more than you would as a younger person. Then we have the decile aspect, which is 36 degrees and with an orb of 2. And some keywords here is serendipity, specialization, and skills with purpose. So again, this is an aspect that you won't easily spot because it's not easily to see within the chart. Keywords here are serendipity, which is, oh, look, that was just a fortunate thing that happened. So 2 planets in decile will bring fortunate things to you. It will be serendipitous, how those planets are for you. It is a place where you can create some specialization or almost become an expert within the meaning of those 2 planets in some way and craft yourself some skills with purpose. So this hooks into the specialization of it, that it may be easy for you to just play the piano or, I don't know, do some crafting or something like that, or run a business or something even like that. But it's serendipitously that you can specialize and have some skills with purpose. And in a way, it's almost what you do when you're not really paying attention. So those 2 planets in decile will indicate that sort of thing for you in your chart. And then just as a bit of a roundup, so we've got a bit of a grip on what's going on here, we tend to have hard and soft aspects. And the hard aspects divide the circle by 8, and they are the opposition, the square, the semi-square, and the sesquiquadrate. These tend to be the hard aspects. They are the challenging aspects that get us to do things and get off the couch, get out of bed, and go and do something. Then on the other side, we have the soft aspects, which is the division by 6, and this is the trine and the sextile. And these are generally blue, and they are the aspects where ease and flow can come in, so where you're not struggling with these, and life can be pretty easy where you have trines and sextiles between 2 planets. So, of course, In general, in a chart, you're going to have a multiple of aspects, and you will have some hard and some soft. But the idea is to understand how the tension's flowing and where you have to really put your focus. So that's my roundup of the aspects. Right, so there you have it. I've gone through the meanings of most of the aspects that you're ever going to come across when you're doing Western tropical astrology. We've covered major aspects, minor aspects, and lesser used aspects, and maybe you've heard of some of these aspects and learned to love them yourself, or you might just find that there are some aspects you didn't even know existed. Some of the lesser used aspects certainly are not always used in general use. So hopefully there's some information there that you can use. If you are starting out, concentrate on the major aspects first, get to know what they mean, and even in the charts you're working on, cancel out the other aspects and only display the major aspects. That's going to be your main thrust of the interpretation as well, so they will be stronger for you. Once you've mastered and understand what the major aspects are in the chart, then you can come on to the minor aspects, add those in, see what they're adding or detracting from your interpretation, to give you a richer interpretation for your clients. And then when you have a wet weekend, start looking into the lesser used aspects, see if any of them resonate with you, see if you have any of these lesser used aspects within your own chart, because that will be of interest as well. So there's quite a lot to do with aspects, and really it's a super interesting part of astrology because it brings the dialogue between two planets, which are the energies in your chart, together in some form or other, that they are talking to each other for you in your chart. So this is why aspects are so interesting. I'm Alison Price. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.